T. Welcome to the command post. You know what it is. Post up and take command. I, of course, am your commander-in-chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So I'll start off tonight's show with discussion around Brian Robinson. Obviously, that was the news that really swept up, Commander Nation, and it galvanized us. We're family. I talk about this family that we've cultivated, right? That we've created. And when you go through things like that as a family, it affects you. And yesterday, just doing the show, I talked about it being therapeutic, but a lot of you were referring to Brian Robinson as if he had passed away. And yesterday, I don't know if you remember me continuously saying over and over again, he's not dead. Like, don't refer to him as was. Don't refer to his season as being over, because none of these things are true. Now, he may ultimately miss the entire season. I don't know the severity and extent of his injuries that he suffered due to the 2 gunshots. Reportedly, one in the glute, so one in his ass, and one in his lower extremity, in his leg. He had surgery today. Apparently, it went successfully. This is according to Brian Robinson himself. Now, again, what's the extent of the injuries? How long are they going to keep him out? How long is the rehab process going to be and take? Don't know, okay? And at the end of the day, that's the furthest thing from anybody's mind at this point, is how long any of that is going to take. However, yesterday's conversation got me to thinking, after, talking with you guys for just a bit over an hour or so, and having some of the discussions that we had yesterday. We couldn't go through another one of these deaths. We're not in a position to do that. I don't know what we would have done had he passed away. You know what I'm saying? Like, think about that for a second. And I'm so glad, and that was the first thing that I said. It was the first thing that all of you said. It's the thing that keeps getting repeated over and over again. It's just, thank God he's okay. We're so glad he's okay. But what if he wasn't okay? I don't know how we would have processed that. I don't know how we would have gotten through that as a fan base. We're still reeling from Sean Taylor. A lot of people haven't gotten over that. And all of those memories, all of those feelings, all of those emotions came rushing back yesterday. And I think that's why a lot of you were talking as if Brian Robinson's career was over, his life was over, because it got you feeling like Sean Taylor all over again. And I had to constantly remind you guys, hey, he's not dead, guys. Like, he may play this year. Like, relax. I get it. It's a traumatic situation, but after I left the stream yesterday, I just couldn't help but think to myself, man, we can't take another one of these. We're not in a good enough mental state to take another one of these. No fan base has had it as bad as we have. I think the Browns are as close as you can get, but they haven't experienced death. At least I don't think. I'm not a Browns fan, but I can't remember them experiencing death before like we have. We've been through a lot, and a lot of the stuff we've been through as fans has been self-imposed by the organization itself, and it just trickled down onto us as fans, and we have to deal with the bullshit that they're doing, right? And that's the same thing with Browns fans. They've had to deal with a lot of bullshit from upper management that has caused their team to be absolutely horrid over the last 2 decades, maybe even 3. A lot of their heartbreak has come on the field. John Elway has gotten in their ass a couple of times, the drive, and things of that nature, the fumble with Ernest Biner. They've had absolutely terrible, luck on the field with them in terms of winning in some big games and some opportunities to, go all the way to the Super Bowl. But And they've had their franchise taken from them. So there's a different level for Browns fans. They're right there. But, man, we've been through a lot. And I don't know if we would have been able to take another death. I just don't know if we would have been able to stomach it. So, once again, thank you, Jesus. Thank you, God, and the Holy Trinity, that Brian Robinson is okay. And, his family, his immediate family, and then the family outside of his immediate family, which is his teammates, guys from Bama, Washington, things of that nature. They were all there to support him, and that was great to see. We heard from Ron Rivera yesterday. He was the one that kind of gave us an update that he's good. He's in great spirits. These are non-life threatening injuries, and he's going to be just fine. So that put me at ease, because I told you I wasn't just okay with the initial reports of, it's non-life threatening and he's in stable condition, because I've heard that shit multiple times in my life and it turned out to not be true. So I've felt betrayed on multiple occasions. And so I'm not comfortable with just someone saying, it's non-life threatening, he'll be fine, he's in stable condition. I needed someone to lay eyes on him and be able to say, no, that's legit. He's okay. It's non-life threatening and he's in stable condition. And when Ron was able to convey that, I said, okay, I can let this go. I can put the phone down. I don't have to check every time I get a notification, and everything's okay. So hearing from Ron yesterday, hearing from him again today, hearing from all of the leaders on the team, Terry McLaurin, Jonathan Allen, and Carson Wentz, you knew that it was going to be a tough day, but they were able to get through it. Actually sounded like they had a great day of practice, and everybody, compartmentalizes differently. Everybody, handles grief differently. We saw that today in the pressers, and it's like the media just couldn't process that. Like, you talk to Terry's very introspective. Terry's talked about, openly talked about, having to seek help. Dwayne Haskins passing away, and a lot of, remember, he's talked about the stresses of being a number one wide receiver and having all of that put on your shoulders. And when you play for a franchise like this one and them not having a lot of guys that they can rely on, you're the guy. It's a lot to have to bear. And so he's like, I've sought help, and, I see a therapist, and that's helped. And so Terry's a very introspective guy. You're going to get more. So that's why Terry's, presser was 17 minutes long today, right? Then you get Carson Wentz, kind of in the middle, introspective enough, not quite Terry McLaurin, but also perspective enough to be able to say, hey, we still got a job to do. We got to go out there and execute, but football takes a back seat when things like this transpire, and that he's okay makes everyone feel better and allows people to go out and do their job, with a heavy heart, obviously, but it allows you to go out and do your job. And I felt like we were able to do that today. That's kind of the sentiment you got from Carson Wentz. That's an 8-minute presser, right? And then there's Jonathan Allen, who I already knew what they were going to get from Jonathan Allen. His mentality was going to be, look, it's a sad situation. You never want to see this happen, but he's okay. And once we figured out that he was okay and that he wasn't going to die, all right, let's get back to football, right? Like, that was going to be his move, because that's Jonathan Allen's move, okay, is, hey, I got a job to do, because he's got that military background. Like, that's what happens in the military. Yeah, your partner may get shot and killed in the line of duty. Guess what? You can't sit there and sulk, Yeah, you're going to have a chance at some point, and a lot of these guys don't deal with that shit, which is why they have some issues, post-war or post, military career, because they don't often deal with this shit. They suppress it and keep going through life like nothing's wrong until one day they blow up on someone, right? But you can't stop in the middle of a war and sulk because your buddy just got gunned down. You got to keep moving. And that's the mentality that Jonathan Allen has. He's a military guy. He was brought up in a way that says, hey, look, he's not dead. He's going to be fine. You got a job to do. Go out and get it done, okay? Go make it happen. And so he explained that to them not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times, but on 5 separate occasions, he was asked about, well, you already said that, you have a job to do. Okay, well, if I already said that, then why the hell are you asking me a question trying to get me to give you a different answer? I said what I said. I meant what I said. And clearly none of you are deaf because you keep repeating what I just said. So I don't know what you want from me. You want me to feel something or say something that I'm not going to say, okay? At the end of the day, we all feel for Brian Robinson. He's our brother. We don't want to see this kind of shit happen. Yes, this does trump football. We are all aware of what went down, and we were saddened by it. But guess what? He's going to be fine. He's going to live. And so, with that knowledge, I'm going to go out here and do my job because I get paid to deal with distractions and still get the task done. So they just had a hard time comprehending that. Like that wasn't good enough for them. So it was interesting to see how everybody kind of processed it, how everybody found out about it. A lot of them found out, they're in group chats with their teammates, and this is how they found out. Jonathan Allen's much like myself. He's like, yeah, I found out about it. My brother hit me up, told me about it. I went on Twitter. I hate that place. Me and you both, Jonathan. Me and you both. But that's how we confirm shit nowadays, right? Like, it used to be once upon a time something crazy happened. You had to watch the news to find out if it was true. Now, I said this when the Kobe Bryant situation happened. TMZ broke his death, right? And you're like, it's TMZ. Like, am I really supposed to believe? Like, TMZ is a legit media outlet now, right? Before, it was like the equivalent to the National Enquirer. Like, who believes that shit when you're walking to check out at a grocery store and you see that shit, they're talking about some crazy ass theory, about this person dying or how Princess Diana, conspiracy theory. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. That's great. You're not reading that shit. You don't trust that. That's garbage. That's how TMZ was when they first hit the, media waves, right? But they've evolved into a legitimate outlet to the point where they break something and you believe it. That's how social media is now. You see something on Twitter, I remember, once upon a time, you see something on Facebook, that shit ain't true. And a lot of times it wasn't. It was a rumor. Somebody started and somebody else ran with it and it spread like wildfire. Somebody's dead. And that person's like, hey, woohoo, I'm not dead, okay? Just so you know, I'm alive, I'm kicking, and I'm well. Nowadays, you see some shit on Facebook, you see some shit on Twitter, 95% chance the shit is true. Anyway, it's good to hear from everybody, hear that most of them are in good spirits. I think Ron is the perfect guy for this team. I've said this numerous times. We've been through a lot. Even since Ron has been here, just think about the 3-year span that Ron has had here, which is why I've said Ron didn't know what he was signing up for. And I'm pretty sure if you gave Ron truth serum and said, hey, you could go all the way back to late December, early January when you decided to sign on the dotted line here back in 2019 into 2020, which is when he signed here in early stages of 2020. I think it was actually late stages of 2019. He might have been, because Bruce got fired at the very end of December, and I think Ron was hired early stages of January. I guarantee you, if you gave him truth serum and you said, hey, you can go all the way back to January of 2020 and make a decision whether you wanted to come here. There were like maybe 5 or 6 job openings that year, and he probably would have been a name to watch for maybe 3 or 4 of them, especially the one in New York, because Dave Gettleman was the GM, and Dave Gettleman made it a point of emphasis to say after the fact, maybe I should have moved a little quicker on Ron Rivera. That's his guy from Carolina. And we swooped in and got him before they fired, I want to say it was Ben McAdoo at that time, before they fired Ben McAdoo. And so we swooped in and got to Ron first. I guarantee you Ron would say, yeah, I probably would take a different job. I probably would have taken the Giants job, or I would have inquired about the Browns job or the Cowboys job or any of the other jobs that were open that year. I would have looked at those jobs probably, a lot more attentive than this one, because this one has been a lot of work. You've had a name change, all of the sexual misconduct stuff off the field. You've had them clean the entire front office wiped it clean. Business side, football side. Ron has had to reconstruct the drainage on the field, new turf, all of that good stuff. Ron has had to try to resurrect this organization's corpse in the national media to make it look like something other than the big bad wolf, which it's a work in progress because, as Jason Wright continuously calls it, the ghosts of Christmas past seem to always come and haunt this organization. He's constantly dealing with something like that, constantly having to answer questions that have nothing to do with football, that had nothing to do with him since he's gotten here, but he finds himself having to redirect all the time. You're dealing with a player that has gotten shot now. You dealt with cancer. There's so many different layers that you peel back. But I wouldn't have another guy here dealing with this than Ron Rivera. Guy that's been through cancer. Team has seen him battle through that. Guy that has shown resolve in the face of adversity with all the shit that's going on with this organization. You can say what you want about Ron. Yep, we're 14-19 over the 2 seasons he's been here. Yep, facts. Won a division, but that was at 7-9. Totally aware. Okay. Haven't won more than 7 games. Yep, I totally get it. I understand. Okay. You're preaching to the choir. I get it. But at the end of the day, there were so many things Ron had to do before he could even try to turn this thing around on the field. And amazingly enough, he got lucky. The division was so bad that he was in the process of trying to change the culture and lucked into a division crown. But Ron's resolve, his toughness, but also his ability to connect with these players, as we've seen over the life of his career, whether going back to Carolina or here in Washington, I think it makes him the perfect guy for this team. They're going to rally around Brian Robinson. They're going to rally around Ron Rivera. They're going to rally around everything that's going on. Carson Wentz told us that our quarterbacks coach, Ken Zampese's dad, and if you're not aware, Ernie Zampese was a tremendous offensive mind in this league for many years with the Dallas Cowboys in particular. He was a huge part of why Troy Aikman was so successful. Ernie Zampese was a mastermind offensively. And so he passed away. So you're dealing with the death of your quarterback's coach's dad. You're dealing with a teammate getting shot multiple times. And it's a lot to process. Ron's the right man for the job. So I'm not shocked that they had a good practice today because Ron is a leader of men. So enough of that. I've probably rambled for much longer than I should have. We do have to get back to football. Yesterday, it just didn't feel right talking about football. This 53-man roster projection video was supposed to be yesterday. I've explained this to you, but it just didn't feel right talking ball yesterday. That to me was the furthest thing from anybody's mind. And so we pushed it back to today. But we got to get to business because the NFL, because we had a player shot multiple times, they're not going to push back the 53-man roster deadline. That's still tomorrow at 4. Okay. So let's get to the order of business of talking roster and what changes to the roster now have to be made due to the sudden loss of a guy that was going to start at the running back position for this team. Let's get to my 53-man roster projections. So let's start with the quarterbacks. It's the easiest position on the team outside of special teams. It's the easiest position to diagnose. They're keeping 3 guys. Carson Wentz, Taylor Heineke, Sam Howell. No debating there. We don't need to spend a lot of time on that. Let's move on to the next position. Running back. So here's the position that suffers due to the news of Brian Robinson being shot and subsequently going to be out for who knows how long. Ron did speak about, potentially putting him on the NFI, the non-football injury list. If that does occur, it's similar to the PUP that you will be out a mandatory 4 weeks to start the season. And then thereafter, you will have a certain period before you have to either make a decision as to them being out for the entire season or to activate them. So we'll see. I think that's probably going to be their first course of action, is to NFI him. Obviously, Ron wants to make sure that, the doctors don't tell him, hey, he could be back in 3 weeks at full strength. Ron's like, hey, oh, wait, 3 weeks? You sure about that? Because if that's the case, I don't want to put him on any list at that point. He'll just be on the 53-man roster. But the likelihood is they're going to put him on some type of list, So I assume it'll be the NFI. He'll be out the first 4 weeks, similar to Chase Young being on the PUP list. Same with Tyler Larson. And then you reassess the situation after those 4 weeks have elapsed. So I think the easiest way to circumvent that injury and not really disrupt the roster that you're trying to construct is to just add Jonathan Williams into the mix. Now, I started to get really antsy, and I thought that the answer might be you subtract one back that was going to do a lot for you offensively, and you add 2 backs to take his spot, because I don't know if one guy can do that. I was thinking maybe adding Jonathan Williams and Jarrett Patterson, and then chopping off some fat at the offensive line. Instead of keeping 10, you keep 9. That's still a possibility. I wouldn't be shocked if they decided to do that. I think the number here is still 3. And if they're going 3, Jonathan Williams takes the place of, because you need a guy just in case Gibson trips on you. Again, you need a guy that you feel comfortable turning around and handing the ball to. They don't feel comfortable turning around and handing it, I don't think, to Jarrett Patterson in a Brian Robinson, Antonio Gibson type of role. I think they feel like Jarrett Patterson is more of a J.D. McKissick replacement. So I think Jonathan Williams gives them a little bit more of that in between the tackles, physical, no nonsense runner that they would have to have in the event that, there's any issues with Gibson, or they just feel like they need to spell him. So I'm going to go with Jonathan Williams, or as Terry called him, J. Will. So no significant change. I was thinking about, just really having a lot being done because of that injury to Brian Robinson that he sustained due to the gunshots. But I think I'm going to just keep it as Jonathan Williams. Wide receiver, there's 6 here. First of all, let me say something, because I've seen a couple of things, out there floating around. There will be no surprise cuts this year. Okay. This team isn't a surprise cuts team. Okay. So I've heard someone throw this out there that De'Ami Brown could potentially be. De'Ami Brown's not going anywhere. They drafted De'Ami in the 3rd round last year. Do you really think they're giving up on a 3rd round pick? Is there enough talent at receiver to give up on a 3rd round pick? Are you crazy? That doesn't even make sense. It doesn't even sound right. You can be as disappointed as you want in De'Ami Brown, but he's a 3rd round pick just a season ago. There's no way in hell they're giving up on him. Okay? 0 chance. So there's no surprise cuts here. And honestly, give me one guy that would be a surprise if he got cut. There isn't one. There's nobody on this roster that you think could, register as a surprise that's going to be on the chopping block. We're not cutting anybody of note. All the cuts will be guys that you think should be cut, or you're not surprised if they get cut. 6 receivers. They could go 7. It's not out of the realm of possibility. I would not be shocked if we see the 53-man roster, or, we'll be watching intently tomorrow and today. There are already names trickling out as we speak right now that are getting cut, but it's the guys you expect to get cut. Okay. I wouldn't be shocked if we're sitting there waiting to hear that Alex Erickson got cut and it just never happens, and then we look up and there are 7 receivers on the team. That's what happened last year. I don't think that's what's happening this year. I think there's 6 receivers. Now, I can tell you this, and this is something that I've thought about, and I almost did this, and I might go back and do this as we speak. The Brian Robinson injury doesn't just impact the running back position. It impacts just about every facet of this roster. Why? Because now Antonio Gibson has to go back to the number 1 running back. And doing that, are you putting Antonio Gibson back on kickoffs now if he's your number 1 running back? The answer is no, you're not. You're not going to have him run a 58-yard kickoff return to the Jaguars' 43-yard line and then have him come out on the first snap and take a handoff. No, you're not doing that. So now somebody's got to return kicks. Even though, it's a lost art in the NFL now because most of these kicks are touchbacks. Still, somebody's got to do it. I don't think that guy's going to be Antonio Gibson now with the injury to Brian Robinson initially. Again, Robinson could be back in week 5. And so you could go back to him being your lead back. But if Gibson's tearing it up, hasn't put it on the carpet, doing the things that we thought he could do before the first fumble that he had in the preseason, do you even insert Brian Robinson back into the starting lineup as the number 1 back? Or do you say, all right, you're back, you're going to get some touches, but we're going to keep riding the hot hand here? Either way, I think Gibson going back to lead dog means that there's a chance that Erickson makes this football team because you need a kick returner. And really, I still don't know if they trust Dax Milne as the punt returner. They may trust Alex Erickson. I said this. If Dax Milne was really your punt returner, why not put him out there against Baltimore? He played in that game. It's not like Dax Milne was out of that game early or he didn't play at all. He played that entire game. If that's the case, why not throw Dax Milne back there for all those punt returns? Give him even more reps. It was Alex Erickson. That's just something to think about. I'm changing my own mind as we speak, and so I'm going to go ahead and make the change right now. As we're sitting here, I'm going to make this change and say Alex Erickson makes this team. I convinced myself. And we're going to change that wide receiver number to 7. It's no longer 6 because now Gibson is your lead back. And so we're going to do that right now. Alex Erickson is now on the football team. That takes me to tight ends. I think this is an easy one. Now, Armani Rogers is interesting. I talked about something that was said about him and the staff wanting a veteran. That easily could be Kendall Blanton, the guy they signed from the Rams. I just didn't see enough from Kendall Blanton in that one preseason game. For me, he just got here too late. Had he gotten here a week prior, played against Kansas City, gotten a week worth of practice between that game and the Ravens game, and then played against the Ravens, this might be Kendall Blanton. Amani Rogers has taken full advantage of the opportunity that was laid in his lap. I mean, he's this year's Torrey McTyer. A guy that came out of nowhere, that had no business making the team, and took advantage of opportunities, and look where he is. If all of these guys don't get injured, Armani Rogers is not making this football team. I mean, unbelievable, meteoric rise to make this football team. This guy was like, out of 7 tight ends that were healthy to start camp, he was probably number 6. And somehow, some way, no Logan Thomas, John Bates gets injured, Cole Turner gets injured, Curtis Hodges gets injured, and he ascends his way all the way to the number 1 spot. Unbelievably. Sammy Reyes gets injured, and it's his show. And he took advantage of it. I got him making the football team. So this is where things change. Because of what I just did, this is where I'm going to trim off the fat right here. We're going to go back to 9 offensive linemen. And Keith Ishmael was my last guy in. He's the first guy out. They're going to go with Wes Schweitzer as the backup center if need be. They've been training Sadiq Charles to also take snaps, but they feel confident that Keith Ishmael is going to make it to their practice squad, and so they're going to cut him loose. hold on to these 9 offensive linemen, and Keith Ishmael will be the guy that they protect every week just to make sure that he's around. Sam Cosmi, Charles Leno Jr., and Cornelius Lucas are your tackles. If you want to throw Sadiq Charles in there as a tackle as well because of his versatility, knock yourself out. But those are the 3 guys that are your tackles right now. Chris Paul also played tackle in college. He's a guard, but he's also got tackle experience. It looks like I have Sadiq Charles' name up here twice. Hold on. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah. Let me get Sadiq Charles out of there twice. He's no longer, for me, a tackle, so I'll leave him with the guards, is Sadiq Charles. So Sam Cosmi, Charles Leno Jr., Cornelius Lucas. Those are your 3 tackles. Then you move to the guard position. Andrew Norwell, Trey Turner, Wes Schweitzer, Sadiq Charles, Chris Paul, right? So you've got 5 guards, interior offensive linemen. Of those 5 guards, one guy in particular, and Wes Schweitzer, can double as a center, and they're trying to teach Sadiq Charles to be able to do the same. And then Chase Roulier rounds out that group. He's the only true center on the roster. But again, Wes Schweitzer did an admirable job last year when thrusted into action as a backup center. And so we know he's fully capable. And if need be, you can play around with the guard positions because you've kept so many guards. You can move Wes to center and still be okay. So that'll be the move until they get Tyler Larson back. And at that point, maybe a guy like Chris Paul is then dropped off and added to the practice squad. We'll see what they decide to do once that situation arises. But all in all, got 26 offensive football players here. 6 between the quarterback and running back position, that's 6. Tight end 4, that makes it 10. Wide receiver position 7 makes it 17. And then offensive line 9 makes it a 26 offensive roster spot situation for the offense. So that means there's going to be 24 defenders. Last year it was 26, I believe. You always want 25-25. If you can get it that way, I don't think you're going to be able to do that, especially with the injury situation or the situation with Brian Robinson. I think that changes. Even if you could, I think it changes it now because I think that alters the receiver position. You were going to keep 6. Now you got to keep 7. With Gibson now going to your lead back, now you got to have somebody return kicks, and that guy is not Antonio Gibson. So now we switch over to the defense, okay? And we start on the defensive line. I think this one is pretty easy. I've seen lists where people have us keeping 10. I don't think we don't have 10 guys worthy of being kept. Now, here's the interesting thing. If there is a 10th guy, I think that 10th guy is William Bradley King, right? It's not another defensive tackle. I feel pretty confident that they're only keeping 4 defensive tackles. Those guys are Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, Fadarian Mathis, Daniel Wise. Now, where the extra defensive lineman could come into play is on the defensive end, side of things. Now, I've got Sweat, James Smith-Williams, Casey Tuhill, Shaka Toney, F.A. Obata making this football team. And I've seen lists that don't include F.A. Obata at all. I've seen lists that include, William Bradley King in his place. I've seen lists that include he and William Bradley King for a total of 10. I've even seen lists that have included another defensive tackle, Hamilton, Big Ham as they call him. I don't think Hamilton's making this football team. I could be wrong. I don't think Justin Hamilton's making this football team. Anyway, the only other thing I could see them doing is adding William Bradley King to make it 10 because at some point Montez or Chase Young is going to be back. And you don't want to have to trim off fat at a different position to add Chase Young to the roster. If you've already got 10, you can just get rid of William Bradley King and you'll keep 10 defensive linemen. But if you only got 9 and you want to keep all these guys, which I think will be the case, then you're going to have to, trim off fat somewhere else on the roster to make space for them. That's another thing to consider. I don't know if they're really concerned about that right now. They'll cross that bridge when it gets here. I think they're keeping 9. And to me, that makes the most sense. 5 linebackers. Now, I could easily see them cutting this thing down to 4. And so, for me, the 3 guys that are locks, Jamin Davis, Cole Holcomb, David Mayo, are locks. They're all going to be on the roster. Now, I think the next guy up is Milo Eifler. They really like this guy. He can run. I've seen him make plays this preseason. He was on the roster last year in terms of towards the end when injuries started to take effect. I think they like Milo Eifler. He's been here a couple of years. They like his athleticism. He's making a football team. He's the 4th linebacker right now. Khaleke Hudson is the guy on the outside looking in. If you're keeping 4, Khaleke Hudson is the guy that's going to be gone, right? I still have a soft spot for Khaleke Hudson. Still think he's a core special teamer. Still think he serves a purpose. I'm keeping 5 linebackers. But trust me, if you ask me, what's a position that they may go scouring around other teams' rosters when cuts are made, looking for some help? Linebacker is one, cornerback is the other position. And so even if Khaleke Hudson makes this team, I wouldn't put him in marker or pen. I'd put him in pencil. Because if they find another guy that they really like, a veteran that's gotten cut somewhere that they feel like fits their scheme, that has some athleticism, Khaleke Hudson's as good as gone. But right now, I've got 5 linebackers. I could easily see it being 4. Cornerbacks. I've seen lists that have 6 corners. I've seen lists that have 6 safeties and 11 defensive backs total. I don't think there's enough talent on this football team at either safety or corner to keep an extra player. I get it that you drafted Sip at the back end of the draft in the 7th round. You don't have to hold on to a 7th round pick. The likelihood is you can cut a 7th round pick in Christian Holmes and you'll get him back on your practice squad. This isn't like a 4th or even a 5th round pick where there could be other teams interested. This is a 7th round pick. That means nobody else was interested, up until the 7th round. Everybody had an opportunity to take him. No one did. He's yours. You're fine. Okay? He's done nothing in training camp, nothing in the preseason that suggests anybody's going to be sniffing around him. Therefore, he does not have to be on the roster. And a lot of times what it boils down to is, can I sneak you through waivers and get you back on the practice squad? You cut Corn Elder. I'm not saying that anybody's out there looking for corn on the cob, but someone might. And if they are, you lose Corn Elder. He's a veteran corner. Can you afford to lose him? The answer is no. You can't. So, William Jackson III, Kendall Fuller, Benjamin St. Juste, Danny Johnson, those are all locks. The 5th corner was the one we talked about ad nauseum. You could throw Christian Holmes in here if you like. I don't think he's the 5th guy. I think that guy is a veteran that they trust in Corn Elder. This is another position that if they find anything out there that remotely looks good, Corn Elder's gone, they're going to add that guy to the roster. Same thing can be said for Khaleke Hudson. So those are the 2 positions I think they're going to be looking around. They may not find anything, but they're going to be looking around, searching through other teams' garbage, looking for another man's trash and turning it to their treasure. But I got 5. I got 5 on it. Got another 5 piece right here. After that, at safety, Cam Curl, Bobby McCain, Derek Forrest, Percy Butler, Jeremy Reeves. To me, this is easy. They've already cut Stephen Parker, and he was the only other guy. And I told you he wasn't going to make the team because he needed to follow up that initial performance against Carolina with another banger. That's how Torrey McTyer made the team. He was tremendous through camp. He came in preseason game 1, showed it again in preseason game 2, and that pretty much locked it up for him. Okay? He had it sewn up by the time we got to preseason game 3. Stephen Parker gave us a gem of a performance in preseason game 1 and then was on a milk carton for the final 2. Safety is pretty self-explanatory. So I feel good about 10. Now, I've seen lists where there are 11. There's no way that there's any less than 10, okay? There's not going to be a situation where there's 9 defensive backs. You got to keep 5 corners, and you're definitely keeping 5 safeties. So, all in all, I've got 24 when it's all said and done. 5, 5, 5, that's 15 plus 9, 24 defensive players to make up the 50 portion of the roster. And then obviously you get to the back end And the specialists, this is easy money. Tressway at punter, Joey Sly is your place kicker, Cam Cheeseman as your long snapper. And that rounds out the roster at 53. So if we're going over it quickly, 3 quarterbacks, Carson Wentz, Taylor Heineke, Sam Howell. 3 running backs, Antonio Gibson, J.D. McKissick, Jonathan Williams. That's a position to watch with the Brian Robinson situation. I think that's going to send ripple effects through the roster because if Gibson's your third back, which he would have been, and Robinson is your lead dog, Gibson's returning kicks, he's your jack of all trades, he's your Swiss Army knife, then you don't need Alex Erickson as your 7th wide receiver. But now that Gibson's back as your lead dog at running back, you don't want him returning kickoffs. So now you need somebody to do that. And why not allow Alex Erickson to take all of that off the plate of Dax Milne and anybody else out there and just let Alex Erickson return punts and kickoffs? He's natural at it. He's done it in his career. He's excelled at it in his career. So why not let him handle both responsibilities? I think that's what's ultimately going to happen. So now you've got 7 receivers instead of 6. Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson, De'Ami Brown, Cam Sims, Dax Milne, Alex Erickson rounds out that group. Logan Thomas, John Bates, Cole Turner, Armani Rogers are your 4 tight ends. I don't think that's going to be that hard to decipher. And then here, I had 10 offensive linemen initially, but obviously the Brian Robinson situation forced me to put Alex Erickson on the roster, which then forced me to adjust the offensive line count from 10 down to 9. And the fact that I trimmed off with Keith Ishmael, who is going to be the 10th and final offensive lineman instead, the lineup looks like this. Sam Cosmi, Charles Leno Jr., and Cornelius Lucas as your tackles. Andrew Norwell, Trey Turner, Wes Schweitzer, Sadiq Charles, Chris Paul as your guards, and Chase Roulier as the lone true center. But Wes Schweitzer is the guy that's going to give you that positional flex that allows you to keep 9 because he can also play the center position. Now you go to the defense. So that's a grand total of 26 on the offensive side of the football. Defensive line, Montez Sweat, James Smith-Williams, Casey Toohill, Shaka Toney, F.A. Obata are your 5 defensive ends. Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, Fadarian Mathis, Daniel Wise are your 4 defensive tackles. You could see a 10th defensive lineman kept. There's been a conversation around Justin Hamilton. I don't think he's the guy. If there's 10 defensive linemen being kept, look out for William Bradley King as that last defensive lineman. 5 linebackers. This could easily be 4. I wouldn't be shocked if it's 4. Again, this is one of those positions. There's just not a ton of talent here. So 5-4, you're splitting hairs. There's not going to be more than 5. Okay. You know, there's a case that could be made for Trey Walker. There's a case that could be made for John Harris. At the end of the day, those guys, you can get them on the practice squad. No problems, no questions asked. So you don't need to keep them on the roster. Jamin Davis, Cole Holcomb, David Mayo, Milo Eifler, to me, are the 4 locks. Khaleke Hudson is the last guy in, and he'll be the first guy gone if this list is trimmed to 4. Cornerback, 5. William Jackson III, Kendall Fuller, Benjamin St. Juste, Danny Johnson, Corn Elder. I don't see how you keep 6 corners. I don't see the reason for keeping 6 corners. Christian Holmes, you can get him onto your practice squad. He wasn't a 4th-round pick. He wasn't a 5th-round pick. He was a 7th-rounder. He hasn't been super impressive. He started out camp hot, and he cooled off considerably. He needs more work, and he can get that in practice. He doesn't have to be on the 53-man roster to do that. Safety, Cam Curl, Bobby McCain, Derek Forrest, Percy Butler, Jeremy Reeves for a total of 5 safeties, and overall a grand total of 24 defensive football players. They're only keeping 5 safeties. That's a lock. They've already cut the one guy that could have made the team at safety to make it 6, and Stephen Parker. He's gone. Didn't think he was going to make the team anyway. And so you got your specialists to round out the roster: Tressway, Joey Sly, and Cam Cheeseman. So that's my 53-man roster projection. Again, these names of guys getting cut will continue to trickle down, and we will see. There are no surprises here. There will be no surprise cuts here. Like, Jeremy Reeves is making his team. That's not going to be a surprise cut. De'Ami Brown's not going to be cut. That's not a surprise cut. There's no surprises here, guys. This isn't a surprise cut roster, okay? We know what this roster is. We know who's making this football team for the most part. Again, the guys that make the back 5 to 7 roster spots who make up that's a group that could go in any direction, but none of those guys making the team or not making the team is a surprise. Okay. It's not going to be like when Adrian Peterson got cut, a few years back. We're like, whoa, wait a minute. They cut Adrian Peterson? Seriously? Like that, there's not going to be one of those. Okay. So, that's my 53-man roster projection. You tell me what you think is going to transpire. Leave it down in the comment section. Looking forward to chopping it up with you guys tomorrow. We will be live to crystallize these roster spots. Should be 4 o'clock tomorrow. We should know every single guy on the roster. It should be crystallized. It'll probably be 5 to 10 minutes after 4. And then we'll talk about it ad nauseum tomorrow. We will be live at 4 o'clock sharp to talk about these rosters. These roster cuts and really crystallize the 53-man roster and see what kind of ripple effects, if any, if that Brian Robinson situation has caused to this roster. But in any event, that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. You know what it is. I'm a Washington fan, etched in burgundy and gold. My Washington spirit will never die. Washington spirit will never fold. Until we meet again, post up and take command. You guys, have a good one. God bless. And as always, good night. LouieTeeNetwork.